So hello everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Adrian Marshall. I'm the facilitator of the Grassy Plains Network, and these days we are part of the Victorian National Parks Association, which has been doing its good work for over 70 years across Victoria. We're very lucky tonight to have Eilish Roberts. Eilish is now I'll get your title right, the Southern Brown Bandicoot Outreach Officer at the Cranbourne branch of the Royal Botanic Gardens. She is very, very involved in citizen science and community engagement aspects of that. She has a background from the University of Melbourne in the Master of Environment, Conservation, Botany, Education, Behaviour Change, which is probably the where the rubber really hits the road. Before I let her take over, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm speaking on from Wurundjeri country and to pay my respects to the Wurundjeri people and their elders, past and present. But I suppose in this month since treaty has happened, I'd like to really extend those respects to all the First Nations people of Victoria and really sincerely hope that that treaty provides a way for us to walk forward together to really heal the country that's desperately in need of some healing. And if there are any First Nations people here too, my sincerest respects to you as well. Also, just before I take off, just to remind you that we have our general meeting after this, so please hang around after the short 10-minute break while we all go to the toilet or whatever. We'll be talking all things grasslands, and it's a very accessible group of people to just chew the grassy fat, as it were. So, without further ado, Eilish, would you like to please share your screen, take over, and do what you do?
Thank you, Adrian. That was a lovely introduction, and thank you everyone for having me and showing up to hear about the Southern Brown Bandicoot. What a great critter to be chatting about this evening. Today, I'm sort of going to be start by talking about the bandicoot, why we love it, what is it? It's not a rat, despite the constant challenge to explain otherwise. And then we're going to just talk a little bit about creating bandicoot-friendly communities in suburbs, which is really a key focus of my work at the Cranbourne Gardens, and sort of some of the progress and some challenges. And I will also just take a moment to acknowledge that I'm speaking on Bunurong country today, and I work on Bunurong country and pay my respects to elders past and present, and really just acknowledge that, talking today about mammal extinctions and threatened species, so much of this has really happened so incredibly recently, post-colonization, and really just appreciating the incredible care for country that has been taking place for 65,000 plus years prior to that, from First Nations people. So, this part, this is me. So I work at the at the Cranbourne Gardens. I'm very lucky to work there, where we do have Southern Brown Bandicoots. And as I said, my role is really focused on increasing community understanding and awareness, supporting community conservation actions, and ultimately trying to help build bandicoot-friendly suburbs. So I do work closely with other groups at the gardens, like Dr. Terry Coates, our ecologist, and other incredible conservation professionals, and we sort of I get to be that person to sort of pass that knowledge on to the community that are living amongst bandicoots. and hopefully will be for a long time into the future. So what is a southern brown bandicoot? They are a little mammal. Their name, I'll just take a moment to appreciate their name, Isoodon obesalis. So Isoodon, even teeth, and obesalis is what you think. They're a sort of little fat round thing. And they get up to around 1.5 kilos, though I think they can get a little bit over that occasionally. I usually say they're sort of smaller than a rabbit, bigger than a rat. They're native to Southern Australia, and they are indeed nationally endangered. So Southern brown bandicoots actually have one of the quickest gestation periods of any mammal. So around 2 weeks they're pregnant for before that tiny little jelly bean baby is born and then lives in the pouch for a little while longer. And you can see they're a really juvenile bandicoot, which they kind of are more at risk of being mistaken for rats because they are so little. And this is often as well, where we see like feral cats and things preying on, young bandicoots because they are so small. So at the gardens, we do have usually a fairly healthy population of southern brown bandicoots. So Cranbourne Gardens really is that last metropolitan stronghold of bandicoots in Melbourne. And we tend to say numbers fluctuate between around 100 and 300 bandicoots. Now, given the drought we are going through, numbers we think are dipping at the moment. Although I was told the other day, one of my colleagues saw 5 bandicoots in one day, and that's really amazing. I've gone months and months coming into work and not seeing a bandicoot for quite some time. So it's spring. Let's hope that they're making lots of bandicoot babies. But these bandicoots sort of they don't only live in Cranbourne Gardens, they also live in the surrounding community. So I'm talking about this local population in Cranbourne. Now, when it comes to their habitat, southern brown bandicoots, unlike the eastern barred bandicoots, southern brown bandicoots are not a grassland species. They're more of a heathland, heathy woodland species. So they love long, strappy grasses and shrubs, sedges. I'm really talking about grassy forms here. They actually use these grasses to make their nests. So as I mentioned, if you were here sort of a bit before we started, bandicoots do not build burrows. Given that they're diggers, that's an understandable assumption to make, but they actually use these grasses to craft their nests, and their nests are usually very well hidden. You're not usually going to spot a bandicoot nest. And another incredible thing about southern brown bandicoots is they're quite adaptable. So when they don't have their preferred species of vegetation around, they will make do. So we found bandicoot nests in agapanthus, in kikuyu. They've used car bodies, like abandoned car bodies and all sorts of things, but ideally they want those long strappy grasses. And often when I'm talking to people about what makes good habitat for bandicoots, if it's hard to walk through, if that's good, like you want really dense vegetation. I often also get people to think about, okay, if you're a bird of prey flying overhead, is it, and I'll go back to this slide here. If you're a bird of prey flying overhead, is it hard to see that bandicoot on the ground? If you're a cat or a fox, stalking a bandicoot, can it get away? Are those plants sort of thick enough that a bandicoot can be hidden, but not too thick that they can't actually penetrate it? So I'll talk a little bit more about specific plants a bit later if anyone is keen to make a bandicoot garden. But that's their ideal habitat. And if you come to Cranbourne Gardens and walk through the bushland, you will see plenty of that sort of vegetation. So in terms of their diet, the things bandicoots should be eating are truffle-like fungi, so subterranean fungi, it's growing underground, grubs, insects, including beetles. That's sort of their ideal food source. Now, we have seen bandicoots eating all sorts of things, much like with their habitat. They're happy to try and make do with not the best plants. They're also willing to eat dog food or pig food or chicken food when they're on people's properties. We've seen it all, but this is really what they should be eating. And if you're eating these things, then you end up with something pretty special. So I often say that southern brown bandicoots and unicorns are not that dissimilar, because they both produce sparkly magical poo. So here is a bandicoot scat, and it has pieces of glitter in it. And that is because they eat beetles. So on this particular, around the time this scat was collected, we had so many colourful beetles out at the gardens. It was just a really good season for them. And you get sparkly things in their scat, which actually is really helpful when you're trying to identify who's left this scat. Insect parts, sparkly, crunchy shells are often in there. But the reason that they're magical is because bandicoots are eating that fungi I mentioned. And the sorts of fungi that southern brown bandicoots eat typically is that mycorrhizal fungi that has relationships with the roots of plants. It helps our plants uptake nutrients. And so they're eating that fungi, they're pooing out the spores all around and keeping our entire ecosystem healthy. So that's one of the ways that bandicoots are really important for our environment. Before I go on any further, though, I just need to make sure that the audience can spot a bandicoot from a rat, because this is the first step to helping them, is knowing what you're looking for. So I've got 4 species on the screen, A, B, C, and D. Feel free to put in the chat even which one you think is a bandicoot. And a few people. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, everyone is on the money here. Yes, that's great. It's very heartening to see. That's right. So A is our bandicoot, and these are some of their sort of common lookalikes. So the native swamp rat. I want to be clear, I'm not anti-rat. We've got some amazing native rats that we love, but they also, below you've got your pest species, your brown rat and your black rat. But once you really take more than a moment to look at a bandicoot, you'll notice that they're quite different. So they've really got that long pointy nose. Their claws are pretty big and strong. Check out the difference between the tail as well. So a bandicoot tail is pretty short. A rat tail is often around twice the length of its body. Also in the way that they move. So bandicoots have a bit of a hop to the way they move, whereas a rat's going to scurry. I had someone call me the other day, very excited that they'd seen a bandicoot on their property, where I probably wouldn't expect to see a bandicoot, which is always very exciting, until she told me it was climbing along her fence. And bandicoots don't climb, or, they're not very good climbers. They're not going to be climbing along the top of your fence. So these are some differences to keep in mind. I think often when people see a bandicoot, it's very quick. So just good to keep that in mind. Also, this big round bottom, or bandy booty, as I love to call it, is the other giveaway. So you got the pointy nose, the big strong claws, the bottom, the tail, and southern brown bandicoots also have these little rounded ears. So different species of bandicoots, often the ears are quite different. Eastern barred bandicoots have sort of pointier ears. But yeah, this is our southern brown bandicoot. Now, southern brown bandicoots are crepuscular. So that means they are mostly active in the evening time, which means you may not necessarily see that you have a bandicoot visiting your patch. But what you can look out for are some clues that they might have left behind. So, of course, scats. You've got their tracks that you might notice. They're sort of spindly things, almost a little bit like a bird footprint. But the main telltale sign, if you've got bandicoots, you're definitely going to see bandicoot diggings. And this is the other amazing quality of bandicoots, are their diggings. And I will say as well, they don't only come out in the evenings. That's just their most active time. But certainly, like if you come to Cranbourne Gardens, you have a decent chance of seeing them at any time of day. So bandicoot diggings are really distinct. They look a little bit like if you stuck an ice cream cone in the ground and sort of wiggled it around and took it out. They've got like a tapered point to them, and that sets them apart from like a rabbit digging that tends to just sort of be like a shallow pit. Bandicoot diggings are this tapered little nose poke. I mean, sometimes if they're really like they've found something in the ground that they're just like can't get enough of, they'll make a bit of a bigger hole, but 9 times out of 10, or even 9.9 times out of 10, this is what you'll see. So you'll see that they dig up this little spoil of dirt. Okay, so underneath that things are breaking down underneath. So they're really helping that top layer of the soil break down. They're cycling nutrients back into the ground. As it rains, they're helping, water to actually get down through that topsoil into the roots of plants. They're aerating the soil, creating little oxygen pockets. And they've even shown to change fire regimes over time because they're reducing fuel load on the surface of the soil. So really incredible ecosystem services here. And this is why we call them ecosystem engineers. So one southern brown bandicoot in just 1 year turns over 3.9 metric tons of soil in a year. That's the equivalent of around 660 bowling balls worth of soil, or one hippopotamus. So for one tiny little critter, all of that soil turning is quite incredible, and it just does so much for our ecosystems. And there's plenty of research on this bioturbation, this turning of the soil, that has shown how important that is. And you can certainly see how they are this flagship species, where if we can really protect our southern brown bandicoots, we'll be protecting a whole lot of other species. And of course, likewise, if we let them if we let their numbers continue to decline, we're going to see some negative flow-on effects there as well. And a lot of the actions that we're asking people to do around bandicoots are really going to be helping plenty of other wildlife as well, and plant life. So now a little bit of background on Melbourne southern brown bandicoots. And I will also say, if anyone has questions, feel free, if I'm missing them, feel free to let me know. But we hopefully will have some more time at the end. So Melbourne southern brown bandicoots, I mentioned that, Cranbourne Gardens is kind of that last metropolitan stronghold in Melbourne and really in Victoria. But once upon a time, and really incredibly recently, when you think about it, in the last 200 years, southern brown bandicoots were recorded as one of the most common and widespread mammals in Victoria. Okay, they were just like everywhere. I recently read a passage of, I forget who wrote it, but an early settler had recorded that he often would accidentally step on the nest of a bandicoot and just, disturb the pair sleeping within. And I'm like, I've never seen a bandicoot nest, and I supposedly work in one of the most abundant areas for southern brown bandicoots, and they're just, those sorts of numbers are just, it's really amazing to think how many there were, keeping our soil spongy and fertile. So they were common throughout the whole bush around Melbourne and the Mornington Peninsula, and very, very quickly they became quite rare. So on the left panel here, I've got sightings since the 1860s. Now, of course, there would have been plenty more sightings, but not many people were taking photos of bandicoots back then. But you can just see the range. And then the panel next to it is sighting since the 2010s. And you can just see how much that range has shrunk. Now, this is from the Atlas of Living Australia. It's possible that some of these, if you're thinking, hold on, why is there a bandicoot sighting there? They may not all be, absolutely, definitely bandicoots, but this just really shows that decline, and the way in which we've gone from quite a continuous spread to more fragmented populations. So we're seeing bandicoots, this sort of big blob here, if you can see my cursor, is the Cranbourne Gardens and Cranbourne surrounds, down to Quail Island, up towards Cooey-Rupp, and this line is, of course, along a roadway because, often sightings are recorded as roadkill. Up towards Bunyip, Garfield, towards Longwarry. They also down at Wonthaggi. This is, a bit of an idea of where we see them, but they are also down towards Wilson's Prom. And on the other side, more towards like Anglesey and Otways as well. So this is by no means all the bandicoots in Victoria, but this is this sort of local populations that I focus on. And just a picture nationwide, they are federally endangered. Endangered here in Victoria. New South Wales endangered. They're doing slightly better in South Australia. And in Tasmania, fox-free, they're doing quite well. Over in Western Australia as well, that's Quenda. So Quenda look really similar to southern brown bandicoots, but they have been determined as a different species. And it's also quite possible that the South Australian bandicoots may also be a different species because they've just been separated for so long. Okay, so the 3 bandicoots I've got circled are our Victorian species. We've got southern brown, eastern barred, and long-nosed bandicoots. And you may have heard the story of the eastern barred bandicoot. That one is, I believe it's critically endangered actually, but there was a point where they thought they were actually extinct in the wild. They've been reintroduced down towards Phillip Island, French Island. They're doing really well down there. Long-nosed bandicoots are doing okay. But these are sort of the bandicoot cousins, if you like. And the sad story is we've already lost a number of these bandicoot cousins. They've gone extinct, and a number of them are in trouble, in declining. So all these ones with a red arrow. And so we can kind of see, well, if we don't really step in, like history is just going to continue to repeat itself. So this is really where we need to be protecting our southern brown bandicoots with everything we've got, because we sort of know what's going to happen otherwise. So I'll start by just talking about a few of the things we do at Cranbourne Gardens, and then we'll get into the sort of trickier problem of bandicoots out in the suburbs. So at Cranbourne Gardens, the main reason bandicoots are still there is that we have a predator-proof fence the entire way around the gardens. So we've got 350 hectares of remnant bushland, and people often ask me, when were the bandicoots introduced? They were always there. They've just been protected, and so they remain there. And, there's a team at the gardens that check this fence regularly for breaches. Of course, when you've got wombats and echidnas just going wherever they want to go, ripping through the fence every week, it does make it tricky. We're also a public garden. We have a gate that remains open so that visitors can come and go. And so it does mean that this isn't a perfect solution. Foxes do get in, and occasionally even cats, but the foxes are the main problem. However, we want to keep out these predators, and we want to let animals like the bandicoot come and go. We don't want to keep them isolated at the gardens. We want them to be able to disperse into the community and grow in numbers. There's only so many bandicoots that this one patch can support. So we have a funky little solution. We have what's called a bandicoot gate. And this is a very high-tech invention. It's a piece of PVC pipe, 9 centimeters in diameter, with a little weighted flap on the end. And what was discovered is that bandicoots have no trouble opening this little flap and going through it. So they tend to use their pointy nose or their big claws to open it and cross through that fenceway. Whereas a rabbit has never been seen using one, a rat has never been seen using one, or even a cat. So they seem to be just for bandicoots. And that is one way that we can keep out rabbits, foxes, and all these other animals and allow bandicoots to come and go. And if you're interested, we also have echidna gates, wombat gates, wallaby gates, kangaroo gates. So every animal has its own special little entry and exit that aims to keep out other animals. So if you drive in through, we have two entrances to the gardens, but if you drive through one of our main entrance, if you like, you may see a low black plastic fence along the road, and that is to keep animals off the road. So this is a fairly recent road ecology project that's happened at the garden. So naturally, we would get roadkill on our road pretty regularly. We now have this fencing with a clear emergency exit gates. So if an animal does get on the road, it's able to get off the road, but it can't use those gates to get back on. And what you'll see there, that sort of creamy coloured light strip across the road, that is a wildlife underpass. So these have been specially created so that bandicoots and other animals can actually use them to cross the road. I don't know how well this will work. There might be a lag, but I'll play this very, very short clip of a bandicoot actually using this tunnel. Hopefully that's visible. I'll play it one more time. So he's very cute. So they obviously need to get from one side of the road to the other. We have some of these videos where if you look really close, you can actually see the shadow of a car passing above, and like that would have been a dead bandicoot. So this has really reduced roadkill dramatically. We've seen echidna trains using it, koalas with joeys on their back, snakes, lizards, like birds. They're all using these tunnels, and these tunnels have then become case studies to sort of be implemented in other areas, which has been really exciting. So we've seen similar underpasses in other bandicoot zones in the area, which is really wonderful. We also do monitoring of our bandicoots, usually with camera trapping, but previously there has been radio tracking. We control for predators when necessary as well. So these are some of the things that we do around our southern brown bandicoots, as well as, of course, this community engagement side of things, which I'll now sort of go to. So what happens outside the gardens? What are we dealing with? And how can we create bandicoot-friendly communities and suburbs? Well, this is a bird's eye view of Cranbourne Gardens. And as you can see, we've become very isolated. So not very long ago, the urban growth boundary moved south to below the gardens, and a bunch of development sprung up very quickly. So Cranbourne is actually one of the fastest developing suburbs in Australia. And the statistics are pretty crazy. The number of houses that are being built and the number of people that are moving into the area, all in a very, very short amount of time. And if I had a more up-to-date photo, you'd see that southern kind of boundary is now also being filled up with houses. So naturally, a population of bandicoots that's quite isolated is eventually going to be genetically in trouble. So things like translocations are probably going to be necessary quite soon to actually keep the genetic health of our population. But aside from that, all of this development brings a bunch of other threats. And I've got here just a little, you can see, between 2011 and 2017, the very swift development that has taken place. Not a whole lot of green space for the bandicoots either. So we have to work within these measures, I guess, to create a bandicoot-friendly suburb. So we get cars and roads, we've got highways, and yeah, as I mentioned, bandicoots do become roadkill, which is one big problem. Another really big issue is these introduced predators. So it's not only feral cats, it's also domestic cats. So roaming cats in general are a really big problem, foxes, and even dogs, when they're let off the lead in a bandicoot area, are known to chase down bandicoots. So we have all these introduced predators. Another one that sometimes flies under the radar a bit is poisons and baits. So when I sort of joke about bandicoots being mistaken for rats, this can actually lead to pretty dire consequences. If you're a new resident and you've never heard of a bandicoot and you see this giant rat-like thing pass through your garden and you freak out and you reach for the rat poison, we've got a real problem. Of course, rat bait isn't only problematic to bandicoots, it's a big problem just getting into the whole food chain. So when particular rat baits, second generation anticoagulants in particular, so the sort of most popular type of baits, they take a very, very long time to break down. So if a little rat or mouse eats that, it dies. It's then eaten by a bird. That's also going to poison that bird. So it's a big persistent problem in the food chain, these baits and poisons. Even slug and snail bait. So if you've planted your veggie patch and you want to keep it safe from snails, well, a bandicoot might come and also eat those. So there's plenty of alternative ways to deal with these pests. BirdLife Australia has a fantastic resource. It's called, I think it's called What to Buy and What to Avoid when it comes to dealing with pests. I won't spend too much time on it now, but certainly that is, like, I could do a whole other presentation just on safer ways to deal with pests that hopefully you keep your bandicoots and other critters safe. Another one is there's a big rabbit problem around a lot of these bandicoot areas, particularly Cranbourne, and people want to bait for rabbits using pindone. Pindone can also affect bandicoots. So yeah, there's a few sort of tricky things to tease out there. So these are just a few of the problems bandicoots come up against in the suburbs. So now we can think, okay, knowing all of this, what makes a bandicoot-friendly neighborhood? What is our ideal neighborhood for bandicoots? What are the people like? What do the gardens look like? Knowing sort of what we need to work with. And there's a few key things that come up that we sort of know that it would be great if the community could do some of these things. So keeping cats contained is a massive one, contained indoors at all times, or not even necessarily indoors. They could be on a cat run, but just not letting our cats roam is really what I should say. And if you're walking in a bandicoot area, keeping your dog on a lead. So that's two really key actions. Reporting sightings is really helpful. And I usually point people towards iNaturalist. If you're not on top of it, sort of aware of iNaturalist, I feel like a lot of people in this audience probably are. iNaturalist is a fantastic, it's a website, it's an app, and you just take a photo of anything. It could be a plant, an animal, a fungus. You take a photo of it. It's really good at actually identifying what that thing is. It's fairly accurate. So usually if you see a bandicoot, you take a photo, it'll be like, I think this is a southern brown bandicoot. And once you've selected that, other people will then look at it and confirm that sighting, or they might say, hey, actually, I think you found a swamp rat. And that then becomes a data point for anyone to sort of look at, and particularly land managers, conservationists to look at and go, hey, we're seeing a lot of bandicoots getting hit on this part of this road. Maybe we need to try and get a wildlife underpass put in there, or whatever it may be. So if you see a bandicoot, try and take a photo, try to log that sighting on iNaturalist is really helpful. We need to sort of know where they are and where we need more support for them. So avoiding baits and poisons, as I mentioned, and of course, planting for bandicoots. And if you are interested, these are some of those species that I really encourage people to plant. Even if you don't live in a bandicoot area, most of these species are just win-win. So for example, the first one I've got there, poas. Poas are the host food plant for over 26 Australian species of butterfly. So, even if you don't have a bandicoot, put a poa in the ground. They provide roosts for native bees and damselflies, parrot species like, your rosellas and things, and other seed-eating birds will eat the seeds. So could go on about every plant on this list, but particularly for bandicoots, poas, lomandras, even garnias are really great. Any sort of grassy form that tends to kind of fall down like a water fountain. So they go up and then they fall back down again. That's that ideal form for a bandicoot. That really helps them make their nest. If it's a grass that's just going straight up, it's not going to be as useful. So also goodenias and correas are really good. So some of these beautiful shrubs, which a lot of those are like goodenia, for example, is like great for your native bees and things like that. But yeah, wallaby grass, saw sedges, heath trees, all these great things. Now, so we've sort of identified these community actions, we've identified these key threats, but underlying all of that is a lack of awareness, right? So I think that's also a really key threat that we need to address. We also know that we can't necessarily fix every problem with community engagement. So something like, the rabbit plague, which does impact bandicoot habitat, or foxes, we can't necessarily expect the community to fully handle that, but there are things that really we can ask of people that will make a massive difference, and that is these actions we've identified. But I think we can't necessarily expect people to go hard for bandicoots when they don't even know what it is or why it matters. So I think addressing that lack of awareness is sort of this underlying thing that we've got to always be keeping in mind as well. And that's sort of how we came up with our strategy for the next 5 years. So thankfully, my role has been funded for 5 more years. And we've taken some time to go, what are we going to spend our time doing? And that is where I've come up with this following, well, not me alone. We have come up with a bit of a strategy, and that is that a bandicoot-friendly neighborhood is one that acts for bandicoots. They're not just aware. I think we can talk and talk all we like, but simply communicating why something is important isn't necessarily going to move people to action. So that's some of that behaviour change that was mentioned earlier. Thinking behaviour change, unfortunately, as much as we'd love it, communication and education isn't enough to get people to actually act. There's a few more things that need to go into that recipe. So ACTS stands for Aware, Connected, Takes Action, Showcase. So a bandicoot-friendly neighborhood is aware, but they also care about bandicoots. This is an idea of not only cultivating that knowledge of what's a bandicoot, what does it need, why is it important, why is it in trouble, but also a bit of an attitude towards bandicoots that, I think bandicoots are cool and I want to help them. So that's kind of that aware step. Connected is getting a community, creating a connected community in terms of the networks of people helping bandicoots. So if you know that the local land care group is doing a planting for bandicoots, or that your local council is giving out grants for bandicoot habitat, or that the gardens are running a workshop on how to make a bandicoot-friendly garden, you've got much more access to the tools to be this person that is acting for bandicoots. So we want to make sure our community is connected, knows where they can get this knowledge and these resources. They take action, so they're doing those steps, they're keeping their cats indoors, they're planting habitat, etc., etc. And lastly, a bandicoot-friendly community is showcasing their love of bandicoots. And I think this one is maybe the less obvious one, but I think if you're in a community that really cares about something, I think a visitor should be able to come to that community and go, these guys really love their bandicoots. And, maybe this person has a sign in their front yard about that, they keep their cat indoors for bandicoots. Maybe the whole street has a sign in their front yard that they keep their cat indoors in bandicoots. And maybe I've just moved into the street and I can feel a bit of social pressure that I should probably do the same. So creating this community pride around bandicoots, and that could look like a whole lot of things as well. So I'll talk in a little bit about some examples about what showcasing can look like. But I think a big thing is really nailing down your audience. So this is a bit of a close-up of that current distribution of bandicoots. and you can see the big blob being the Cranbourne Gardens. Kuwi-Rup is another really key population to it, and so really trying to stay focused on who our target communities are and who we really want to be spending a lot of time working with. And if we zero in here on Cranbourne Gardens and Botanic Ridge, we have a great case study, I suppose, for what could be a really Bandicoot-friendly suburb. So Botanic Ridge is this new development. Oh, it's sort of happened in stages. Some parts of it are newer than others, but directly outside the garden gates. And Botanic Ridge actually has a cat ban. Okay, you are not allowed to own a cat if you live in Botanic Ridge, and that was Casey Council implemented that to protect animals like the bandicoot from Cranbourne Gardens. So we're already a big step of the way. They also have native vegetation landscaping guidelines. So you do need to plant within certain guidelines of native plants. And they also have designated habitat corridors. So these blue lines that you see are designated habitat corridors that will be leading from Cranbourne Gardens out into Botanic Ridge and hopefully beyond. I actually visited some of these yesterday, and it was really cool to see. So these top two here, when I say top, sorry, if you can see my cursor on the right-hand side, these two are quite well developed, whereas this one here on the sort of left-hand side is yet to be planted out. So they're all at different stages, but these are some of those bandicoot corridors that are planted. And that's really exciting that we do actually, even though the houses are built very close together, there's not a whole lot of green space, we do at least have these corridors either already there or coming that will hopefully help bandicoots disperse. Because as I said, the gardens can only support so many bandicoots. If we really want that population to grow, we're going to need them to not only disperse out, but disperse into people's backyards, and make their nests in these corridors. So we don't just want the corridors to be a place of transit. We also want them to be a place where bandicoots can, procreate. So we run all sorts of events at the gardens to try and build this community knowledge and engage the local community. I've got a photo here of our sort of big event, which is the Big Bandicoot Backyard. And we have a giant, looks like an effigy to a bandicoot here made out of plant material that we bring out. Community members can come and learn how to help their local bandicoots. There's the local council doing a plant giveaway of bandicoot plants. We've got performers dressed up as bandicoots. So it's a real celebration of the local southern brown bandicoot, but also trying to build that awareness, get the community connected and help them take action. And I suppose this makes me think about that showcase part of ACTS and going, for the most part, bandicoots are quite invisible in the environment. But what are some things we can do to bring them into visibility? Can we have maybe, a big mural of bandicoots in the local community, or maybe there'll be a local, Southern Brown Bandicoot soccer team one day in the local community. So just thinking of these different ways to create that bandicoot pride, and that will in turn create better attitudes towards bandicoots, create awareness, create a more connected community, and hopefully one that's taking action. And I think that really leads me to that last point of there are already people that are doing incredible things for bandicoots, and elevating those people, championing those champions is something I'm very passionate about. And I hope that in the next 5 years, we see a lot more of those real community champions. An example is there's a golf course right next to Cranbourne Gardens, so Settlers Run Golf and Country Club. And there is an incredible group of volunteers there that have been going very headstrong on creating bandicoot habitat. And they have working bee days, planting days, where a bunch of people show up for the bandicoots. And, this is just one example of some of the great work I see out in the community. And it does make me think we can create these bandicoot-friendly suburbs. I think there is a real hope there that it's possible when I see this sort of amazing work being done. So if you'd like to know about these sorts of events that come up, be it working bees or big Bandicoot backyards or talks like this, or grants, anything. If you want to be connected to the Bandicoot web, please sign up to the Bandicoot Brigade. So this is an e-newsletter that I run, and I only send a few emails a year, really, just with these like key updates. So there's a QR code there, but otherwise, if you just look up Cranbourne Gardens Bandicoot Brigade, it should come up, or Cranbourne Gardens Bandicoot. It shouldn't be too hard to find. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to, open the floor.
Brilliant, lovely, fantastic. That's gives a new meaning to a gated community. I think you've got your magnificent thing there. I could start off just with a slightly sideways question that's probably maybe not specifically to do with what you do. Can you just talk a little bit about the Melbourne Strategic Assessment and your relate, like, because they fund you and so
They
on.
do. So the Melbourne Strategic Assessment is part of DECA, and they, as part of, I guess, all of the development that was set to happen below the urban growth boundary that's now been happening, they created this plan to collect levies from the developers, and those levies directly go to funding like those habitat corridors and things like that. So it also funds my role. And I suppose it's three-pronged what that funding goes to. It's creating the habitat corridors, funding community engagement, and also translocations and genetic rescue as well of the bandicoot. So yesterday I actually went out and looked at some of these corridors, and it's interesting because they are in different stages. So some of them are looking really good, others the plans are still open. But did you have anything specific about?
I was just what, I suppose it's the scope of the works and so on. I know I've there have been like new developments popping up around and so on. Do the MSA actually like input into those, or is it like left to councils to do the hard yards on making sure that Botanic Ridge has its corridor is kept in good nick, for instance, or whatever?
So that's a good question. I know that with the corridors, the MSA are always like collecting the levies and getting them going, but then they will be handed over. So like two of the corridors are along drainage lines, so they'll be managed by Melbourne Water. I think one of them will be managed by City of Casey. So the MSA program does have a life span, like it's not forever. So I think they're more setting things up, but they won't be managing them in perpetuity. They also only cover a certain area. So for instance, there's some land, some bandicoot habitat that looks like it's probably going to be removed near the gardens, and it's actually not MSA managed land. So like there's not anything they can do, for example. It's an interesting one, but yes, they do if it's on MSA land, or within their sort of remit of land, and it's to do with the bandicoots, they'll be involved.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. I've got a question in before I come to you, Rosemary. There's a question in the chat from Stuart Proper, asking how supportive are the associated government and council agencies. So Casey and Cardinia, I guess, are your main council. And should we be lobbying more? What do you like?
Okay. I suppose within Casey and Cardinia, there's definitely some really strong support for bandicoots. And like, for example, in Cardinia, they've created a whole biolink plan for bandicoots that I think is really promising, and working with like landholders to actually create these links. Obviously, yeah, it's councils are very big bodies, and there will always be people with different ideas for and against within one organization. So it's hard to speak for all, but I do see a lot of really good work coming from both councils. And something I will plug as well is both councils have a Gardens for Wildlife group, which is volunteer run and sort of, I feel like, quite a humble program in a way, but that's something I'm often pointing people towards. So if you have a property in Casey or Cardinia, but also many councils run this program, you can actually get a free visit to your garden from volunteers, and they'll tell you sort of what to plant for your local wildlife and then give you some free plants. So programs like that, I think, are really wonderful. And yeah, obviously there's still plenty of work to be done. New developments are always coming to the fore. And yeah, sometimes things go well, sometimes they don't.
Okay. Rosemary, you have a question.
Yes, I'll just turn
yourself back on.
Turn myself back on again.
There you
I apologize for being late. Got the time wrong, and hence I'm eating dinner, which is why I've got the vision turned off most of the time. I thank you so much for your work. It's fantastic, and I'm so glad the MSA is supporting you. This is fantastic.
Thank you.
Back when Brompton Lodge was approved, I coordinate the Green Wedges Coalition. We opposed the rezoning of Brompton Lodge and a whole lot of other things, and including, and in fact, the rezoning of the land around the Botanic Gardens was probably the last state government land grab there before the urban growth boundary was introduced. It was just really sad that they got that through before the UGB, but it's great the work that you're doing. So getting back to Brompton Lodge, I went to the Brompton Lodge planning panel, and I had an excellent expert witness. Someone might help me with the name. O'Malley. It wasn't Nick, because Nick's the age reporter. I assume it's not Nick, but he was an excellent expert witness. And at the time, there were 4 Bandicoot experts, including David Nichols and the main guy at the Botanic Gardens, whose name also I've forgotten.
Terry Coates.
That's right, Terry Coates. And so they got together and worked out that what Bandicoots needed was 80 metres wide Bandicoot habitat corridors. So I went to VCAT with Nick. No, it wasn't Nick, but with Mr. O'Malley. I should look this up before a meeting like this, but he put in a fantastic presentation. But the panel decided that because they had a conclave of the experts, and for some reason they all said different things, even though they'd...
Oh, we've lost you, Rosemary.
We've lost Rosemary.
Of course, the developers said that's the amount they agree on. But
you dropped out for a second there, Rosemary, but you were saying they agreed on...
Yeah.
They agreed that 80 metres wide was the appropriate width for a Bandicoot habitat corridor. And so we put that case to the panel, and the problem was that the panel held a conclave, and their experts said different things. Developers' experts always do, but it was disappointing that our experts didn't all stick to the 80 metres wide. But I just noticed, because with this talk coming up, I actually looked up on my phone the map of Brompton Lodge, which is now developed, and I noticed it does seem to be some kind of corridor down a creek there, a couple of creeks, and I just wondered if that's going to be good for banding, because at the time we did find a couple of dead bandicoots on the road. I forget which road it is, the road between Settlers Run and Brompton Lodge. So we knew that the bandicoots were there. Anyway,
totally. Sorry. And I don't know, sorry, my throat's getting me. I don't know. I know bandicoots have been spotted in Brompton Lodge. That being said, I don't know how recently, because they do need to cross that highway. But I have seen that there is that vegetation there, which it does look pretty good. I can't speak to Brompton Lodge too much because I just don't know it as well, but what I can speak to are the wildlife corridors, which are going to be 30 metres wide, not 80 metres, and that is definitely something that yeah, obviously we were pushing for more. There's a paper somewhere that says they've observed them making nests in 30 meters, and that's, I guess, the smallest width, and so that's the one that got through.
Yeah.
And yeah, the sort of sections where the corridors wind and might, yeah. So the thing is, we also don't know heaps about what the exact boundaries are, but obviously we want them to have as much as they possibly can. Yeah, I'm not too sure about the width though in Brompton Lodge of what they ended up coming to.
Do you know just from looking at those corridors, if you've seen them, roughly how wide they are? I'm just a bit pleased that they did go through. I'm just thinking maybe they didn't totally ignore our submission, you know.
Totally. Yeah, I really don't know in Brompton. Like, I drive past it, but I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. There is also a lot of like green space, like as in just lawn, but then I have noticed some really nice looking vegetation. But I couldn't tell you how wide it is.
Okay,
I suppose one thing I will say, and also to the question earlier about lobbying, there is a precinct structure plan that's still open for consultation. I think,
sorry,
gosh,
I
I'll need to find
lost you there for a moment.
Oh, sorry. Just saying, and to the earlier question before, there is still a precinct structure plan that's open for consultation that will continue on these corridors. I think it's the Devon Meadows
and
precinct.
Casey Fields.
Yeah. So they're still open for consultation, and they will be the like continuation of these corridors. And so just putting that out there, that obviously we want those corridors to continue and be fit for purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And would there be a chance of getting Bandicoot underpasses under that road between Settlers Run and Brompton Lodge?
Wouldn't that be incredible? It's really expensive to retrofit those. Incredibly expensive. So when there's like a road upgrade or something, that's when you got to swoop in and try and get a Bandicoot underpass. So we have
there's actually a drain under the road, which is where we found the dead Bandicoot. So there's a drain under the road. So it shouldn't be too hard. And the drain looks to me to be opposite one of those creeks that come out of or go into, I think they're going into Brompton Lodge, not coming out of it.
Yeah, okay. And so drain, like we see them use drains, obviously that they're only appropriate some of the time when they're not full of water and things. But that was how we knew that
if there's a drain, you'd think you could sort of, you know, put a corridor.
You would really think, and this is the thing, is under a road there's all these different services that are happening, and they've got to try and engineer the corridor to fit within it. So there's a road upgrade on the South Gippsland Highway just before you enter into Cranbourne Gardens, and when that was happening we got an underpass put in. There's also some in Botanic Ridge where these corridors are, but of course that's all when the works were happening. So if there's ever a spot that it would be good to get a corridor, I suppose it's either when a road upgrade is there, or there's been talks about would it be possible to retrofit one into like a speed hump, but probably not. But yeah, there maybe one day. Because that would be amazing, so that they can actually cross that road.
And can I just introduce David Cole to this group? David's just formed a new Western Port Greenwich Protection Group, and he was interested in Bandicoot. We were talking the other day, and he's interested in Bandicoot, so I've invited him to register, and here he is. So
thank you, Rosemary.
And David might like to get involved with the work that you're doing.
Yes. Yes. So I won't go into it in great detail, but sort of Jen Dalglish is also on the call tonight, and both of us sort of pivotal in forming up this new Western Port Greenwich Protection Group, which is basically looking at all the people who live around the urban boundary. In fact, the Western Port Greenwich goes right out to Bunyip and Lang Lang, and the whole area where you had lots of red dots about where the bandicoots are. Anyway, we're sort of basically bringing together people in the Greenwedge community, so the people at the other end of the bandicoot corridors, and probably we'd like to talk to you about sort of what sort of things need to be going on in those areas as well, or would ideally be going on in those areas, and help bring the community into that. So
fantastic. Yeah.
Thanks,
Well,
Stephen.
I will I can put my email as well, like in the chat, if anyone wants to continue speaking. Yeah, of course. I'll type it in. But yeah, very happy to talk to anyone.
Yeah, we'll arrange to come and have a chat with you sometime.
Yeah. No, sounds good. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
There's a question from Derek Best here on your genetics, like how do you bring in and move out bandicoots? Yeah.
Yes, good question. That is something is currently being discussed. Translocation is really seen as like a bit of a last resort, but it's going to need to happen. So it would involve trapping bandicoots in one area and I guess introducing them into a new space. So people have asked for our bandicoots. Of course, it's really risky when you know they're protected in Cranbourne Gardens with a predator-proof fence to then take them to a place that isn't protected. It's sometimes quite hard to justify. But yeah, this sort of thing is going to need to happen. So bandicoots, southern brown bandicoots have been introduced to the Briars fairly recently. So they captured a few, gosh, I think they were from Clyde, maybe some from Kooyarrup, from a few different parts. They trapped these bandicoots. I couldn't tell you the exactly how they do it because I wasn't there on the day. But they trapped them, they brought them to the Briars, and the idea is that this could create a bit of a source population of a few different genetic populations breeding, and maybe then some of those bandicoots could be introduced into different areas. So there is a little bit of work already happening there.
Excellent. Other questions, people? Must be many more. Can I ask how while people were thinking, how engagement with like communities from different communities like Indian communities or the large new residents of these growth suburbs, how that take up is going, and if you have something specifically focused on the called community?
Really, really good question. And that's something I've recognized in this 5-year sort of strategy that I probably need to be doing more of. So I think like a lot of the community in that area are like all different backgrounds, and I probably need to do a little bit more investigating as to how to bring in everyone. If anyone has any advice, I'm happy to hear it, of course.
We have the same thing with grasslands. It's just trying to reach those communities has been quite difficult, I suppose. And we haven't done a good job of it either. Georgia,
I got to say though, like I've done some Gardens for Wildlife visits, for example, for City of Casey. So I volunteer with them sort of as part of the Bandicoot work. And I've done some visits of people that are like newer to Australia. And I've had such positive interactions where they want to learn about what species are local to the area and how they can help. Like I've seen a real curiosity there, maybe more than I see sometimes with people that have lived here for a very long time. Interesting to see.
Indeed. Georgia, you have your hand up.
Yes. Hello. First of all, I really loved your talk. It was really amazing to see your passion and your knowledge about this.
Thank you.
My question was, for someone like myself who is located in Melbourne's west, I know that we do not have bandicoots that live here, but what can we do to protect our mammals?
Yeah, so I suppose a lot of these actions I talked about really extend to so many other mammals and wildlife. So certainly like I think roaming cats is a massive problem, and they've played a part in like a significant role in a lot of our mammal extinctions in the last 200 years. So I think whether it's lobbying with your local council to, you know, improve the cat containment bylaws, or you know, whatever it may be. I think cats is a big problem, or cat owners, I should say, and also these when I mentioned baits and poisons, like that is the fact that you can just go to Bunnings and buy these baits that will stay in our food web for such a long time. Like they don't break down. Powerful hours, for example, like a recent study on powerful hours found, I forget the exact number, but like an alarming number of them had these poisons in their system. So I think doing things around baits, around roaming cats, and also just creating whatever habitat is needed for the animals in your area, for the wildlife in your area, is going to be a positive thing. But I suppose as well, being that community champion wherever you can. I think we underestimate our influence on our little bubble, and you know, these over the fence conversations can actually go a much longer way than, you know, someone else kind of giving a talk. You know, is that going to influence your neighbor? Is that going to influence your school or your workplace? I think we all have the power to kind of be that champion in your community. This is a bit of a ramble, Georgia, I'm sorry, but yeah, I suppose what I'm saying is a lot of those actions can be carried through, for whether it's for bandicoots or not. Yeah, and also iNaturalist, encouraging people to report sightings of whatever wildlife they see in their area.
Yeah, beautiful. Also, I did have another question, if that's okay. So I have a background in wildlife conservation biology. I'm currently a field ranger and also studying my master's in teaching, hoping to use my master's and my wildlife degree to teach the public. And I was hoping, if it was okay, like if we could like stay in contact, and like if I could send my CV by chance. So I want to extend my skill set and all that. So yeah.
Of course. I will type my email into this chat, and anyone that wants to contact me, please do. I'll be happy to chat. No worries. Thanks for the questions.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Rosemary, do you have another question?
Yes, I was just going to respond to Georgia to say,
yes.
I'm not sure if you can hear me. The internet's dropping out. But Georgia, you mightn't have the furry bandicoots, but you've got striped legless lizards. And I remember about 25 years ago, when Harry Van Morst was running the Western Region Environment Centre, they made T-shirts called "I love legless lizards." And I reckon T-shirts are probably a good way to get going.
I shall get one of those T-shirts, because last Friday, actually, for work, we've done the striped legless lizard survey. We only found one in our grid, but
you're so
that's
lucky
okay.
To find
A
one.
win is a win.
One is good. That's excellent. Good suggestion, Rosemary.
It was my first one I've ever seen. So
So one other question. Ronnie S asks if other organisations have been talking to you about your ACTS framework and so on. Like, are you having an influence beyond your dedicated sphere, I suppose?
Yeah, that's a really nice question. It's fairly new. I've written a little article for it was like the Botanic Gardens, Australia, New Zealand sort of. So that was sort of my first entry into getting it out there, because I do think that that formula could be applied to so many different species. So not as yet, but I think that's also something I'd love to work on, is spreading the word for that framework. And if you think that's could be applicable to another species, I'd love to know about it. Yeah.
It's the whole grassland. It makes obvious connections to just grasslands in general too. So yes. Lovely. Do we have more questions, folks? Or are we all done, all sold? Perhaps we can let Eilish get on to
Thank you.
Probably enjoying her dinner.
Thank you for all the great questions, though. It's been a lot of you are thanking me for my enthusiasm, but I think like it always inspires me to connect with a group such as yourself that are all clearly incredibly passionate and doing amazing things. So thank you for having me. And yeah, if I hear from any of you, yeah, please feel free to get in touch.
Yes, Eilish's email's in the chat there. So yes, do pester her as much as possible, because yeah, everyone needs a Bandicoot brigade. Yes, indeed. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.